there, interwebs. I hope you're all doing well. So, this video is going to be kind of an addendum to the video that I released over on my main channel yesterday, if you're watching this the day this hopefully goes out, about the Avatar: The Last Airbender live-action remake, adaptation, whatever you want to call it, that came out on Netflix just last week. And I'd highly recommend watching that video before you watch this one, because this video is going to be mainly just me talking about some discussion, criticism, some thoughts that just popped up in the comments and elsewhere from that video that I thought were just actually cool to just give further credence and discussion to. And also on that note, keep in mind that this is me just talking out of my butt without a script or anything like that, so I'm mainly presenting this more as just things to discuss, and I want to hear your thoughts down in the comments. And nothing I say here is my final take on anything, but more just being like, I'm curious. I want to hear people's thoughts, because I think these are kind of cool and intriguing avenues of discussion that I personally want to just hear more about from all of you, as well as just kind of throw my thoughts into the mix. I really wish, YouTube was more conducive to actually having a conversation one-on-one, so hopefully this is just a way to spark that, and I'd love to hear all of your thoughts down below. But the first thing that I want to talk about is, I saw a few comments on the video going over why were you talking about capitalism within the video. I mainly talk about capitalism in the context of how Avatar: The Last Airbender, the live-action show, strips meaning from the original OG animated series. And I sort of talk about how capitalism and capitalists and things like that strip meaning from art and actually want art to just be presented as apolitical, quote-unquote apolitical, meaning status quo reinforcing, status quo reinforcing, thus be able to just sell it as a product rather than as a thing that will actually meaningfully engage with thoughtful concepts and ideas, or just things that would push back against the status quo and actually thinking about dynamics of oppressor and oppressed. And people in the comments were sort of thinking about well, this feels kind of outside of the realm of you talking about colonialism, as I discussed throughout the video, as that's a pertinent theme to Avatar: The Last Airbender. Touch upon this in the video, but just to kind of make it a little bit more explicit for folks, is that one, as we talk about capitalism, we have to understand that capitalism is itself an evolution of colonialism, in that racial capitalism, which is the idea that capitalism is really just still building off of the racial dynamics and white supremacy that colonialism institutionalized. And I think that is very much true. You can sort of see in America most especially, but around the world, how capitalism itself builds itself off of a white supremacist worldview to uplift, white people, specifically white men, but white people generally, while also pushing down black folks and other BIPOC folks, and capitalism just being a way to differently present a form of colonialism. I mean, you could even talk about how, colonialism based itself off of quote-unquote enlightened ideas of science, and that sort of spinning off into pseudoscientific bullshit that was used to justify slavery and colonialism and all of that stuff. And how that similarly echoes how capitalism sort of has this logic of the free market that underlies all of it, just saying oh, this is science, this is something real, when really it's just a institutional propping up of this ideology and way of thinking that sort of says, oh, the free market is just the enactment of the will of the people, rather than what it is, which is this enactment of this systemic institutionalized racism and stuff that's built out of colonialism from years past. So I think even on that basis, just linking, capitalism and colonialism as I discussed in that video is a worthwhile, connection to make. But also, it's worth saying, too, that the Avatar: The Last Airbender live-action show is itself something that is born out of capitalist desires. I mean, look at how Netflix is just continually just taking animated series, especially anime, but animated series generally, and just making it live action. You had that with Cowboy Bebop, One Piece, Death Note, probably a few others that I'm blanking on. I think Yu Yu Hakusho. And that just showcases that Netflix isn't really coming up with new ideas, but looking around for earnest works of art that had meaning behind it, and just being what can we gobble up to then just put in live action and regurgitate so that we can make money off the back of it, rather than actually having to find anything earnestly new. And that does several different things. When things do that, what they usually are doing is just, as I sort of talk about in the Avatar video, strip mining the original and just removing a lot of the nuance of it to just shove it into 8 or 10 episodes or however many episodes in a way that isn't really attempting to emphasize the original themes of the original work, but instead just trying to like remix them and make them live action to make more money, and which is almost always going to result in the dilution of the message of the work, which I really think is the case that you can see in Avatar: The Last Airbender, but I think is true of all of the live action remakes. Like, is it really arguable that there's any live action remake that Netflix has made that is better than the original animated series? I think the only one that I've liked really on any level was the One Piece one. I thought the One Piece adaptation was actually pretty solid, but even then I would doubt that anyone would argue that the anime or the manga that it's based on was worse than the live action remake. And that's really just because the impulses behind making those shows are just to make money. There's not an earnest desire by an artist to actually try to say something with that. And I want to be fair too, you know, Albert Kim, who is the showrunner of Avatar: The Last Airbender, the live-action series, clearly comes off as a fan of the original work, but I do wonder, you know, he's a man who's written and worked on many other shows, and I just sort of wonder, you know, is this something that he would have wanted to do if Netflix hadn't been like, let's do an Avatar: The Last Airbender series, or was it something that he sort of jumped into in order to say, like, I can put my own stamp on this, rather than something like he had something that he wanted to say using Avatar. And I think that the differences in that impulse, I think, is really important, because I have seen adaptations or new interpretations of work that has a source material that have been better or also like just as interesting as the source material, but they usually come out of an impulse that is someone coming in and being like, I want to use this IP, use this source material to say something of my own, or to uplift it, or to say it in a different medium that I think will connect with other people, rather than the impulse being like, we're going to make this to make money, and then someone coming in to like just enact that like capitalist desire. And that's not to say that Albert Kim didn't have something that he wanted to say. And one thing that I didn't talk about in the original video that I think is actually something I should have discussed, but was something, again, my blind spots and biases, is that, you know, Albert did put in a lot of Asian representation into Avatar: The Last Airbender, which the OG show, which, as it was inspired by Asian culture but written by white people, did not actually do. Like, a lot of the actors on the original show were not, you know, Asian folks. And the live action series employs numerous Asian folks. And in fact, I think might even be one of the larger, or if not one of the largest, TV shows today that is hiring a bunch of Asian folks, both behind the camera and the front of the scenes. And I actually think that that is really awesome. I mean, looking into Albert Kim's career, he has done a lot of work to put Asian folks in front of the camera and behind the scenes, and get more representation in Hollywood for that, which I think is a really admirable thing. As someone who myself is working to, you know, make movies starring trans folks and queer folks in my own work with my movie Identities coming out, like, that's something that I aspire to, and is something that I really think is important. So I don't want to like deny that. I really hope that like my criticism of Avatar: The Last Airbender is as a show is not coming across as me being like, I don't want to see more Asian media. In fact, I would love to see more media, especially shows not made with like source material made by white people, being made in Hollywood from, you know, Asian perspectives, and that goes for so many different perspectives. But then we can go back to, again, the institutionalized white supremacy of something like Hollywood and capitalism in general. So it's like, you know, what are you trying to just be a simulationist and just trying to, you know, put your voice into a white supremacist machine that is never actually going to allow you to say something with your own voice, at least as fully as you would like to? And should we be focusing more on other? I mean, that's another whole other conversation I think we can and should have. And I think Avatar: The Last Airbender is kind of a uniquely interesting point on that front, because it's like, yeah, it's propping up a lot of Asian creators, both in front of and behind the camera. And my hope would be that this would lead to like Albert Kim and other creators on this show to be able to get more of their actual earnest like work from that, like, is grounded in their personal perspective from the beginning, at least from the root of it, out there. But again, how much is that going to be allowed in a Hollywood system? That's not for me to answer, and that's something that I think each individual artist can and will wrestle with. I wrestle with it myself, being someone who's making queer art that I hope gets put out into, you know, more people to see. But then it's like, what am I contributing to when I do that? Because this is something that I'm thinking about with my own film, Identities. You know, my intention with Identities is to be a movie about fighting back against systems that try to push us all into very separate, bordered, identitarian groups, be it man or woman, gay or straight, black or white, whatever you so choose, rather than understanding that we are actually a collective of people that should move beyond these ideas of identitarian politics, while also understanding that the system that we work within tries to place us in a hierarchy, and by doing so, it's something that we have to reckon with when trying to form a collective action of like, how do we, talk across these power hierarchies and try to create a collective, while also knowing that like power hierarchies are still going to be present within our collective that we need to kind of break down because of our ingrained biases by the system itself. Like, that's what I hope Identities is about. That's what I'm aiming to get at anyways. You'll all tell me whether it actually accomplishes that. Like, that's not for me as the artist to say, that's for all of you to talk about when it comes out, hopefully. But that's like my aim with Identities. And alongside with that, Nebula, and I'm not trying to sell Nebula here, but Nebula is certainly not like a Hollywood studio or anything like that. And I am so thankful for Nebula's support of not only my voice, but also numerous trans voices, both within my project, because I've allowed, because I've had so many trans folks, queer folks, women, be centralized in the making of this piece. At least that's my aim, and I'm so thankful for that. But then I'm also propping up things like Abigail Thorne's own movie that she's doing as a trans woman, and Nebula itself being a streaming service that has, a lot of diverse voices, and it also being an artist sort of run platform, which I think is great. But then also, I kind of have to, conversely with all of that, understand that Identities is a thing being put out into a capitalist system to be a product. Like, the goal of it is for it to try to make money for Nebula, and the financial aspects of it are not my intention with it. Like, my only goal with Identities is to hopefully have the message that I want to get across be felt by people who watch it, and also, on a personal note, be allowing for me to be able to make more art beyond it. And hopefully prop up more folks and uplift more folks as I do that. That's my goal, and I just want to be able to make enough money to make more things. That's really, like, I'm not looking to become like a millionaire or billionaire. My goal is to just be able to make the next piece of art. That's my goal as an artist. But I do have to understand that, like, I live in a capitalist world that's always going to make everything, including myself, my own artistry, and my own work, into a product, and we'll try to glom onto that. And as hopefully my career continues to grow, the question I'm going to have to wrestle with more and more and more is, where do I, acquiesce to the system in order to try to make my art? And where do I try to push back against it? Because I'm only one person, and my goal is to try to tear down these systems. I hope to try to, make art that feels like it inspires people to push back against this art. But also, the way we live in right now, the only way to make a lot of art a lot of the time is to prop it up into this system. It's a thing that you always have to wrestle with. And it sucks because that's how the system sort of perpetuates itself. And it's something that I don't have the ideal answer to. And I know it's something that someone like Albert Kim probably wrestles with as well, as he took the assignment to make Avatar: The Last Airbender. And, I can't speak for him, but I would certainly be understanding if, like, his thinking was like, I can take this show and I can use it to prop up my own career so I can be able to go and tell on my own things, and then also use this as an opportunity to uplift other Asian folks, which is something that he is clearly very passionate about. And I hope that occurs. Like, I hope so many of the Asian folks not only get a paycheck from this show, but also continue to get more work down the line, especially the younger actors who are the central characters of the show. Like, I hope this platform for them just sets off their career in exciting directions. They get to tell more art and have decades ahead of them of being able to tell and do cool things. So, like, I'm sure that was a calculus in his making of it, and I think that is a worthwhile thing that he has done with the show, and I want to praise him for that. But it is also just like something to also we're talking about of, like, Avatar being the live action show being part of this corporate machine. And so I think that is, something that I could have been, discussing more openly in my video. But my video was mainly focused on, like, the writing of the show. So I don't want to let myself off the hook for not discussing that. But, one video can't be everything. Do you see why, by the way, my videos are always like 2 hours long? Because I try my best to get all this stuff in, and this is how my mind works on so many things, and I try to position as many voices as I possibly can, while also knowing, like, I have my own biases and stuff like that. But, like, this is why my videos are so goddamn long. Sometimes I fuck up, and sometimes even in over-explaining I make it worse. Like, this is me learning as an artist, but, like, hopefully you can see that the attempt is being made. I don't know. Again, that's up for you to critique. But to go back to the point that I was originally making, though, like, Avatar: The Last Airbender as a show is a series, the live action series, is being made just to like drag more money out of stuff, to like just wring every penny out of stuff. And it's just frustrating because that is kind of the impulse with so much of Hollywood nowadays. You just see the strip mining of IPs just continually occurring without any real earnest desire to say something unique with that IP. And that's just becoming more and more the case with Hollywood. You're seeing this consolidation of so many studios like Warner Brothers and like Paramount even now trying to sell itself off to other places and things like that. And you're just going to see more and more of this fearful desire to do anything new, which is really frustrating because I'm finding as an artist more and more and a creator, and also just as someone who wants to watch art, that I just have less and less interest in things that Hollywood is making and being more and more drawn to indie film. And I think there's always been a level of that, but I think there was a time where Hollywood was willing to prop up more interesting art. Again, art mainly written by white people. I mean, you're like the 70s and 80s era of like auteur cinema, which is very much always focused on white dudes. So there's again the white supremacist aspect of that, but still like Hollywood's being even less desirous of that, as culture generally falls more and more into things like fascism and stuff like that, as we're seeing more and more white supremacist rhetoric continually crop up. And this desire to do apolitical art, as I talk about the Avatar: The Last Airbender video over my main channel, is stemming from that, to like not upset people. And as they continue to try to not upset people, things slide further and further to the right because they're just like, they're not willing to battle against with art these assumptions ingrained in our society, and then fascism gets more and more propped up because, as I talk about in that video, like the video removes Sokka's overt art of like overcoming sexism to not upset anybody who might be upset by sexism, but then presents within the show itself, in my mind, and this is my opinion, and this doesn't have to be yours, a sexist worldview in how it, utilizes characters like Suki or dilutes Katara's arc. And that's not to say that there isn't some element of like pushing back of sexism within the Avatar: The Last Airbender show. I mean, there is Katara at the end of the season fighting back against institutional sexism within the Northern Water Tribe, which is itself an adaptation of the storyline from the OG show, and I would argue is a dilution of that storyline instead of a better expansion or evolution of it. But again, my opinion, your own opinion may differ on that, and that's totally cool. So I'm not saying it's like completely devoid of that, but I do think that it ultimately is more not confronting us as the audience to analyze that in a deeper way, and how it comes up in us personally rather than in institutional systems, and how institutional systems enact themselves in individual biases that I think Sokka's arc was getting at. I mean, Sokka in the live action show does display sexism still. This is something I didn't make as... I hinted at it in like a couple lines in my video, but like I wish I had been a little bit more explicit, because Sokka does showcase sexism within the show. He does have this very implicit chauvinism that he displays when he's like, I need to be the protector of my village. But the show really never like actually focuses on that, and some would argue that, there's an implicitness in that, by like, he does have some sort of arc. But for me, because the show, especially in its second episode, reinforces a sort of sexist worldview by having Suki be a kind of prop for Sokka's arc, when he does actually sort of like, tangentially confront institutional sexism by, propping up Katara at the end of the season, it's not actually confronting sexism in a kind of nuanced way. It's just sort of just flattening the arc in a way that I think just it makes it less powerful. In my opinion. So I wish the show had been able to not just present a sexist worldview by trying to be apolitical, because I think it dilutes what I think was the actual intention of folks like Albert Kim to confront sexism within the show. I do think I don't want to say Albert Kim is a sexist or anything like that. I think the intention was to do that, was to confront these things, but I think that it's made less powerful by these sort of impulses that he has, and other writers on the show may have to lower it down, the sexism, in a way that sort of like doesn't upset anybody who may have watched the show. And as a result, that impulse makes the work less powerful than it was in the original series. And that's ultimately kind of what my point was with that other video, and why I wanted to talk about the institutions of capitalism and white supremacy and colonialism that are both within and outside of the show itself, because I think they all sort of create this confluence of why the Avatar: The Last Airbender series, in my mind, is not as strong as the OG series. The OG series is, again, not perfect. It was written by white people. They had their own biases as well, and certainly there's a lot of problems within that show, and I think that becomes most explicit, actually, in Korra, more obviously, though it's still there in the original Avatar: The Last Airbender. But if you look at Korra, like, those first 2 seasons especially are like, whoo, yeah, I see the biases now. But certainly are present in Avatar: The Last Airbender. So I don't want to, like, argue that the original show was perfect by any means, but I think because, you know, of all these impulses of, like, Netflix just trying to make money and just trying to just quickly make a buck off of Avatar: The Last Airbender as a property, rather than actually wishing to, like, say something with it. And then this sort of, like, need to, like, shove everything into 8 episodes, and the need to, like, remain apolitical in a way that sort of becomes more mass market consumable, and also, like, all of these other aspects outside of it, I think ultimately leads to a diluted series in terms of its messaging when facing off against these things that the OG series attempted to tackle. I don't think Avatar: The Last Airbender, the live action series, is the worst offender of this. Like, I look at something like For All Mankind that I made a video on my main channel about as well, or something like Starfield. This is me being a science fiction fan, but I look at works like that and how they really actually prop up capitalism and capitalist realism as a worldview. I think those products are much worse about this. And Avatar: The Last Airbender at least, like, makes some level of attempting to address those things in ways that are present, but I do think by especially comparing it to the OG series, it is not as strong in that, and I think that comes out of the capitalist impulses that were sort of motivating the creation of the live action series. So that's just something that I wanted to toss out to all of you. Again, this is me rambling. So I really toss it to all of you to, what do you think about all of this? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. Especially too, I would love to hear, again, by no means, I'm not asking for your emotional labor, but if you are someone who, is Asian, I would love to hear your thoughts on the Avatar: The Last Airbender live action remake, because, I'm a white person, I'm an idiot, I probably fucked up some things or missed some things, or there's some nuance of things that I'd love to hear from you, especially, from, I'm saying Asian, but obviously Asian is a very, broad term for numerous different communities and thoughts and religions and beliefs and nationalities. So, obviously there's numerous different things to talk about within all of that. So, yeah, I don't want to press all of it into a single mold. So, yeah, I'd love to hear all of your thoughts down below on all of that, and I welcome the discussion. So, live long and prosper, everybody. I hope you're all doing well, and take care.